Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to talk about this full moon that's coming up this weekend. And it is an interesting full moon. It is the second full moon in Aquarius. We had one at the very beginning of Aquarius. This is going to be at the very end of Aquarius. So let's take a look at the chart without further ado. So here we go. Oops. And here's the chart, and you can see that it is 29 degrees and 37 minutes, almost out of Aquarius into Pisces, but not quite there, because this full moon is at the very tail end of Aquarius. It is conjunct Jupiter, very interesting, and it is the full moon that follows the new moon a couple of weeks ago, and we have that chart here also, the new moon from Sunday the 8th. Oops, didn't take. So here we have the new moon. And what I'd like to point out in these two lunations that are the lunations of August, what I'd like to point out is there's a lot of outer planet stuff going on. And what we can say with regard to the zeitgeist, with regard to what's happening, it's kind of like the 60s. And this is when the 60s happened. We were in the middle of this Uranus-Pluto conjunction, with Saturn opposite for part of that time. And Richard Tarnas in his book Cosmos and Psyche, identifies a 15-degree orb for this conjunction, for every outer planet conjunction, and he talks about world transits, and he talks about this is the characterization of this time period from 1960 to 1972, which is really pretty close to the societal shift that we saw at that time, which was really rather profound. And we saw it as an experimental sideshow to the main economy, which kept rolling along, although quite a bit influenced by, you could say, the counterculture movement. And there was a flurry of activity in the arts, great music, obviously, great film came along, that really explored. This is the era of when, for example, we had for the first time a movie like The Graduate, where we're starting to question the values of the society. And, here he is at a party with his parents, and a guy comes up to him, his parents' friend comes up to him and says, "I've just got to tell you something, plastics." And so this was when that became questioned rather than accepted as it was in the 50s. It was kind of like a plastic era. But the 60s were definitely a shift. The reason I bring all this up is that was Uranus-Pluto, and we've had Uranus-Pluto in the opening square following that conjunction. That was in the middle of the 2010s, 2013-15. And then what we have now, I think, is really kind of the aftermath of that, where we're beginning to see, and the question becomes, is this viable? This counterculture ideal of kindness and getting along, a peaceful way of being in the world, positive things instead of killing everybody in sight that doesn't agree with us, using the military to try to create a diplomatic solution, which doesn't work very well, as we're seeing more and more evidence. So can we do this? Can we evolve as a society? Which means, can we evolve as individuals, every single individual on the planet? Can we do it? And some of these new archetypes that have been coming along that I've been contributing to the research, Eris, for example, feminine warrior in support of soul intention, trying to find out where you're really at, what you really want, and what you can do about that, and how you can articulate that, and how you can work towards being the most authentic version of yourself that you can be. That's what Eris is all about, and it's fascinating. And then, of course, we have these other new ones, Haume and Makemake, which I believe I call them nature planets. They have to do with the profound connection to nature that we really have as humans when we really look into what we have going, when we look within ourselves, going towards that integration, which Carl Jung called individuation, which is part of our 20th century inheritance that is beginning to bear more and more fruit as we begin to really explore those things. So that's kind of the background of what we've got going in this decade of the 2020s, this COVID decade, unfortunately at this time. It's still not done with that, but it is part of the societal reset that's going on, where people are having more thoughtful experiences of what's really happening, what do we really want. Climate change is a huge factor. We have to adjust our whole society for that. We have to stop consuming so much. We have to be willing to be a little bit more bare bones, not luxury all over the place, not the great inequality that we are experiencing between the wealthy and the impoverished in this world. So those things, and they have to do with the outer planets, which, like I say, we have been seeing the aftermath of the opening square between Pluto and Uranus. You can see it in this chart. So here's Pluto at 25 degrees of Capricorn, and it's been in those kind of degrees of Capricorn since the beginning of 2020. And here we have not the square anymore, because it's moved beyond. It would have been the 25 degree more. Well, actually, here's marking the square is Eris. Eris has been in perfect square with this Pluto, which kind of is similar because it's representing transformation. And Uranus has been ahead of that, though, in the next sign of Taurus. Now, the thing about Uranus, of course, it's been in a square condition much more close at the beginning of this year and until about May with Saturn. So we have the Uranus-Saturn square now, which does relate to some of the things we've been seeing in the zeitgeist. We've been seeing this huge division between conservative approaches and progressive approaches. And we've been seeing, of course, also, which is remarkable to me and which I really wanted to mention, we have seen this incredible question mark all over the place of what is true. We have the ex-president saying he actually won the election, which the evidence doesn't support, but he's saying it over and over and over again, the same lie, called the big lie by the progressives and by the Democrats and by many people that look at what's going on, I must say. And then we have also the vaccine controversy. I want to say it's almost 50-50 or something like that, some people say the vaccine is absolutely essential to end the pandemic. Only way we can do it, we have to make more and more quantities. We have to get everybody vaccinated, the whole world, 80%, 90%. Other people are saying, no, that's baloney. We don't need a vaccine. We need better treatment methods. We need better social distancing. We can beat this virus. It's not that hard to beat it. We don't need the vaccinations. And they are suspicious of the vaccinations, and they are also suspicious of the profits of Big Pharma, which God knows that could be something to be suspicious of, since there is billions of dollars involved there. So anyway, I just find that it's rather remarkable that we have such a dichotomy of what is true. This question mark of what is the truth of the matter. And I want to explore that a little bit by looking at these lunations. So here's the new moon lunation. At that time, it was 16 degrees of Leo as far as the actual degree of the new moon. And by George, that's pretty much of a square with this Uranus. And did we have only the square with Uranus? No. We also had quite a bit of Neptune going on, you see, and Neptune has a lot to do with this question of what is reality, how much of the beyond and other dimensional realities of spirit can we take for granted, and also can we use our imagination to conjure up a whole different world. It could be a world of fantasy, it could be a world, it could be music, it could be, ways to get beyond our just nuts and bolts physical situation. That's Neptune. But there's a lot of Neptune in this configuration. Now, you can see this little thin purple line here that goes from the new moon to Neptune. And if we put the mouse on it in the time passages software, we can see that it's half a degree off of a biquintile. Now, some people might say, well, that's a minor aspect, but it is within half a degree, so it's stronger that way. And these minor aspects actually do make a difference. I'll give you an example, which happens to correlate also with some of the interesting information about this new planet Eris that I've been working with so much. It turns out that Eris with Saturn, which is not exactly what we're seeing now in the sky, although we did in 2020, early 2020, when also Saturn was there with Pluto around the 22 degree mark of Capricorn. So there was this square which developed even further by November of 2020. But just to say, in a natal chart, I see Jupiter, I mean, sorry, not Jupiter, but Eris. Eris with Saturn, I see very often has to do with defending the underdog, a sense of fairness. If you think about it, it makes sense because Saturn does represent our social connections, society in general, and seeing the underlying qualities of society. What we want is justice, what we want is fairness for all, and so that's why I believe there is this connection between an Eris-Saturn connection in a natal chart, and I call it defending the underdog. It's a strong sense of fairness. And who has that but Elizabeth Warren? So at one point I was talking to a friend and I said, oh, Elizabeth Warren, perfect example, without looking at the chart, perfect example of this kind of absolute devotion to fairness, because that's who she is. She really wants to see income equality come about. She really wants to see more money poured into the disadvantaged because they have been overly burdened with disadvantage. And you'd like to see that rectified. And she was the consumer watchdog group for a while. She was head of that new agency, and of course now she's a senator. And she ran for president. Anyway, Elizabeth Warren. So I went to look at the chart, and here we were, my friend and I, and we were saying, well, there's got to be a strong, I was saying there's got to be a strong Eris-Saturn. And what we could find was, yes, there was an aspect between Eris and Saturn within 1/10 of a degree. So it kind of bore out my theory, my mention that was, defending the underdog. It was a biquintile. So just to let you know, the biquintile is not nothing. It's 2/5. It's a doubling of the quintile, which is a 72-degree aspect, so it's 144 degrees. And we do see in this chart, which was the chart of the new moon a couple of weeks back, before this full moon that's coming up, we do see that not only was Uranus strongly featured in the fact that there was a huge square between the new moon at 16 degrees of Leo and Uranus at 14 of Taurus, but there's also this really close biquintile within 1/2 a degree between the sun and moon, between both of these, these are at the same place because new moon, to Neptune. And I really feel like that kind of captures the sense of the times. We also had Venus opposite, closing in on a close opposition, almost 21 degrees here, so less than 2 degrees. So we have a strong position of Neptune in this new moon. We have a strong position of Uranus in this new moon. And we certainly have a strong position of Pluto because all along there's been this square between Eris, very slow moving, and Pluto, but it's a T-square, and that T-square has been coming back into effect. So right here at this new moon of August 8th, you can see that the opposition between, this is another one of those new planets, Haumea, which has to do with this profound connection to nature. But the fact that these two kind of outer planets, kind of like Pluto, Plutoids, of Eris opposite Haumea, making a T-square to Pluto, means we do have a powerful Pluto, and I believe there's also a parallel. It's a contraparallel between Pluto at 22 and 0.7, 2241 degrees of declination in the negative direction. So that's minus 22.7. A contraparallel would be in the positive direction for Makemake, another one of these new planets. And that's where we put the mouse and go also a right click here, 22.7. This is 2242 versus 2241. So we are seeing that coming in also, a connection between Makemake and Pluto by declinational aspect, a connection between Haumea and Pluto, very close here, 1 degree off, by square, and also supported by the square from Eris to Pluto, T-squared to Pluto. So all three of these important outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, very strongly emphasized in this new moon that we're still in the midst of for August, and we're about to hit the full moon of that. And my next question would be, looking at the full moon, following this by 2 weeks, do we see some of these same aspects or not? I mean, it wouldn't be the same aspects. So in the full moon, taking place now at 29 degrees, you see, of Leo, about to be, the Virgo season, is about to begin on Sunday also. Here we have, coming up on Sunday, August 22nd, 5 in the morning, this full moon opposition at the very last degree of Aquarius, which is suggestive right there because the last degree is a significant degree of any sign. we are kind of exploring what does it really mean to be in Aquarius? What does it really mean to be humanistic in our approach, and trying to see how we can better the social situation of everybody here. It has to do with the 11th house. It has to do with recognizing future trends, group connections to society that we favor, and how can we see a better society emerging. Well, we have, again, Pluto is still in the square to Eris. I don't think that, well, the contraparallel, now it's 22 degrees 44, so these are very slow moving. The contraparallel is still there, but it's still there, but it's now a little bit off, 22.5, 22.20. So it's a third of a degree now, but it's still contraparallel to Maki. And interestingly, though, again, Maki is now conjunct Venus at 7 degrees of Libra and 6 degrees of Libra, and at 8 degrees, which is a trine, of Aquarius, we have Saturn. So now Saturn is kind of more emphasized in this full moon than it was before. We still have the connection from, now it's Mercury that's at 18 degrees, so this is a forming opposition between Mercury now and Neptune. And at 14 degrees of Virgo, so making another trine to outer planet, we have Mars. So Mars at 14, making a partile trine to Uranus. Mercury beginning its opposition, getting closer and closer over the next couple of days beyond Sunday. Anyway, we just see the same three outer planets with Saturn added in and Jupiter added in, because the full moon is actually conjunct Jupiter. So this is a very powerful time. What we're looking at, I just want to make the overview and say, what we're looking at is a very powerful time, this whole August period, when really the rubber meets the road. You know, we're starting to really see what do we have to do to social distance. Masking is necessary, vaccine is necessary, if you believe in vaccine. I happen to think the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are very effective, very effective. So what do you want to do to, as a society, to try to get back to normal, end the pandemic, take care of everybody, and correct income inequality, stop putting so much money into weapons of war, start putting more money into climate change, which is vital. We see the sea level rise is already happening, and the extreme weather is already happening, the fires in the West, and now in Europe as well, the droughts, the extreme weather conditions where there's a hurricane just sits over the Bahamas in recent times, or huge flooding in, I think it was Germany, where there's just a lot of, extreme weather is one of the things of climate change. We have to start ameliorating climate change. We have to start ameliorating income inequality, in my opinion. And we have to try to discern what the truth is as we look at all these different claims that are being made politically. Like we have to restrict, according to the Republicans, we have to restrict access to the polls, which means fewer people voting. We have to support the idea that there was fraud in the previous election, which there was not, but it's a convenient lie for the Republicans because they lost, and this is one way to explain that. So there's a lot going on. There's really a lot going on, and I know it's very difficult. It's hard to know what to do. It's hard to look at the huge forces at work and say, well, what can I do? How can I be part of that? But you can, because each one of us, again with Eris, each one of us has the opportunity to look inside, see where it is we stand, and take a stand, articulate our deepest and most profound vision for the future, for what we value, for what our principles are, and try to really live up to what we can be. And then, no matter what happens, well, you did your best. And that's really the recipe to me in these times. So we have some tough times happening, and I think I'll transition back to the other view. But there are tough times happening right now. And we do have to recognize that. There is no point in being Pollyanna and saying, oh, gee, I guess we don't have to worry about it. Everything's taking care of itself. No, it's not. So we really have to take action, and it depends on just what you believe. Just really stand up for your truth. That's what has to happen right now. That's what everybody has to do right now. And when I say right now, I mean this decade. This is a really pivotal decade, and this is a pivotal month and a pivotal year of a pivotal decade. And we really do need to pay attention. We need to do the best we can to discern the truth, to act upon our own sense of the truth, to act upon our deepest principles, and to really stand up for each other and protect each other and try to make it through. So that's the message. That's the cheerleading message. And that's what I have to share with you today. So best of luck with all that. And we'll